99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
The year was 2147, and humanity had spread its reach far beyond the confines of Earth. With colonies spanning multiple star systems, the United Earth Federation, UEF, had become the dominant force in the galaxy. The exploration of new worlds brought both hope and fear as settlers faced harsh environments, alien species, and the isolation of space. To combat the loneliness of these frontier worlds, many colonists brought with them the most faithful companions they knew, their pets. Dogs, cats, and even more exotic creatures traveled with their owners to the farthest reaches of space, providing comfort and a sense of normalcy in the vast alien wilderness. On the remote mining planet of Arcania, life was harsh and unforgiving. The planet's surface was a barren wasteland, scarred by deep canyons and towering rock formations that housed rich deposits of minerals essential to the UEF's ever-expanding needs. The colony on Arcania was small but vital, its primary function to extract and ship these minerals back to Earth and its colonies. Beneath the surface of Arcania, however, lay a secret that would change the course of history. Deep within the planet's crust, UEF geologists and scientists stumbled upon a strange, glowing mineral unlike anything they had encountered before. It emitted a faint, pulsing light and radiated an energy that defied all known scientific explanations. The discovery quickly caught the attention of Dr. Ilara Quinn, a leading scientist specializing in xenobiology and energy manipulation. Dr. Quinn was dispatched to Arcania to investigate this mysterious substance. The mineral, named Zerothium by Dr. Quinn's team, exhibited unusual properties. It seemed to resonate with living organisms, subtly altering their biological processes in ways that were both fascinating and alarming. Initial experiments with small insects and plant life revealed accelerated growth, enhanced resilience, and even the development of entirely new abilities. Intrigued and driven by the potential applications of Zerothium, Dr. Quinn began to conduct experiments on larger subjects, namely the stray dogs and cats that roamed the mining colony. The first subject was a stray dog, a large mixed breed that had wandered the colony for years, surviving on scraps and the occasional act of kindness from the miners. Dr. Quinn and her team exposed the dog to a controlled dose of Zerothium radiation. The results were immediate and astonishing. The dog began to grow in size, its muscles bulking up rapidly as its fur took on a strange metallic sheen. Its eyes, once dull and weary, now glowed with an unnatural light. But the changes weren't just physical. The dog's intelligence seemed to increase as well. It began to understand commands with an almost human-like comprehension, and its instincts sharpened to a terrifying degree. Encouraged by the success, Dr. Quinn's team expanded their experiments, testing Zerothium on various animals within the colony. Cats became faster and more agile, their reflexes bordering on precognitive. Birds exposed to the mineral developed the ability to navigate complex mazes with ease, their brains processing information at incredible speeds. The most remarkable discovery, however, was the development of a low-level psychic bond between the animals and their human handlers. This bond allowed the animals to sense their handlers' emotions and intentions, leading to an unprecedented level of coordination between them. Word of the experiments quickly reached the higher echelons of the UEF. The potential for using these enhanced animals in military applications was clear. If these creatures could be trained and deployed in combat, they would provide a significant advantage over any alien species the UEF might encounter. The decision was made to classify the Zerothium research and initiate a top-secret project known as Operation Warhound. As the Warhound initiative began to take shape, Dr. Quinn found herself grappling with the ethical implications of her work. She had always viewed science as a means to improve life, not to create weapons. Yet the pressure from the UEF was immense. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the UEF was determined to maintain its dominance, no matter the cost. Despite her reservations, Dr. Quinn continued her research, refining the process of enhancing animals with Zerothium. The first generation of warhounds, as they were now called, began to emerge. Canines with superhuman strength and agility, felines with near invisibility and deadly precision, and other creatures transformed into living weapons. These warhounds were paired with elite soldiers, trained to act as extensions of their human partners in battle. The stage was set for a new era in warfare, one where the bond between humans and their pets would become the most potent weapon in the galaxy. Little did they know this was only the beginning of a conflict that would span the stars and change the fate of countless worlds. Nova Station, a massive orbital facility hovering above the Earth, was the nerve center of the United Earth Federation's most secretive and ambitious projects. It was here, in the cold vacuum of space, that Operation Warhound was launched. The sprawling complex buzzed with activity as scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked tirelessly to transform a radical idea into a reality. The stakes were high. If successful, the Warhound initiative would give humanity a decisive edge in its ongoing struggle to maintain dominance in the galaxy. The facility was a fortress of steel and glass, its interior a labyrinth of sterile corridors and high-tech laboratories. Within these walls, Dr. Alara Quinn led a team of the brightest minds in the UEF. Her work on the Warhound initiative had quickly evolved from a scientific curiosity to a full-scale military operation. What had begun as an exploration of Zerothium's effects on animals had become the centerpiece of humanity's strategy for survival. The first phase of the initiative focused on selecting and enhancing the animals that would become the Warhounds. The scientists chose breeds known for their loyalty, intelligence, and physical prowess. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and even Siberian Huskies were among the first candidates. But it wasn't just dogs. The project also included cats, birds of prey, and other animals, each chosen for their unique abilities. In specially designed chambers, the animals were exposed to carefully calibrated doses of Zerothium radiation. The transformation was immediate and profound. The dogs grew larger, their muscles rippling with new strength, while their senses became hyperacute. Their fur thickened and hardened, providing a natural armor that could repel most physical attacks. The cats became faster, their movements so quick and precise that they could outmaneuver even the most advanced drones. They developed the ability to blend seamlessly into their surroundings, becoming virtually invisible to the naked eye. Birds of prey gained enhanced vision and speed, turning them into perfect reconnaissance units. But the physical changes were only part of the transformation. The Zerothium also affected the animals' brains, enhancing their cognitive abilities and creating a psychic bond with their human handlers. This bond was the key to the Warhound initiative's success. It allowed the animals and their partners to communicate on an almost telepathic level, sensing each other's thoughts and emotions. This connection was so strong that in battle, Warhounds and their handlers moved as one, reacting with split-second precision and understanding. The UEF handpicked elite soldiers to be paired with these enhanced animals. These were men and women who had proven themselves in countless skirmishes across the galaxy, veterans with nerves of steel and the reflexes to match. They underwent rigorous training alongside their new partners, learning to harness the Warhound's abilities and adapt to the new dynamic of human-animal combat units. Captain Marcus Kane, a battle-hardened soldier with a reputation for being both fearless and resourceful, was among the first to volunteer for the Warhound initiative. Kane had seen his share of combat, and he knew the value of having a loyal partner by his side. When he was introduced to his new Warhound, a massive German Shepherd named Thor, he was immediately struck by the animal's intelligence and power. Thor wasn't just a dog, he was a force of nature, and the bond that quickly formed between them was unlike anything Kane had ever experienced. Training was intense. Kane and Thor, along with other Warhound units, spent months in simulated combat scenarios designed to test their limits. The soldiers learned to trust their Warhounds implicitly, relying on their enhanced senses and abilities to gain the upper hand in every situation. The psychic bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, allowing them to anticipate each other's moves with uncanny accuracy. As the Warhound units became more proficient, word of their success began to spread through the ranks of the UEF. The military leadership, once skeptical, now saw the potential of these enhanced animals. They could be deployed in a variety of roles: frontline assault, reconnaissance, infiltration, and even psychological warfare. The Warhounds were not just tools of war, they were partners, capable of thinking and acting in ways that no human soldier could match. The true test of the Warhound initiative came when the UEF deployed its first Warhound units to the planet of Valkor 4, a remote colony world that had become a flashpoint in the ongoing conflict with the Krognar, a warlike alien species that had been a thorn in humanity's side for decades. The Krognar were relentless, their superior technology and brutal tactics making them one of the UEF's most formidable foes. Valkor IV was a critical battleground, and the UEF could not afford to lose it. As the Warhound units arrived on Valkor IV, they were met with skepticism by the seasoned soldiers already stationed there. The Krognar had repelled every UEF assault on the planet, and many believed that nothing could break the stalemate. But when the Warhounds were unleashed on the battlefield, everything changed. Captain Kane and Thor led the charge, their unit striking at the heart of the Krognar defenses. The warhounds tore through enemy lines with a ferocity that shocked even the most hardened veterans. Thor, his senses heightened and his body enhanced by Zerothium, could detect hidden Krognar soldiers long before they could attack. Kane and Thor moved as one, their psychic bond allowing them to coordinate with perfect precision. Infiltration teams, led by cats who could slip through enemy lines undetected, sabotaged key installations and sowed chaos among the Krognar ranks. The Krognar, caught off guard by the sheer speed and lethality of the warhounds, began to falter. Their advanced technology was no match for the raw power and adaptability of these enhanced animals. What the warhounds lacked in sophistication, they more than made up for in unpredictability and sheer force. The battle for Valcor 4 quickly turned in the UEF's favor, and within weeks the Krognar were in full retreat. The success of the warhound units on Valcor 4 was nothing short of a turning point in the war. News of the victory spread rapidly through the galaxy, and the warhounds became the stuff of legend. They were no longer just pets, they were heroes, symbols of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. But as the Warhound Initiative gained momentum, so too did the questions and concerns about the ethical implications of using living creatures as weapons of war. Dr. Alara Quinn, the architect of the Warhound Initiative, found herself increasingly troubled by the direction her work had taken. What had started as a scientific exploration of Zerothium had become a military juggernaut, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were tampering with forces they didn't fully understand. Despite her misgivings, the Warhound Initiative continued to expand. More animals were enhanced, more soldiers trained, and more victories won. The UEF was now on the offensive, reclaiming lost territory and pushing back against alien threats with a new sense of confidence. But as the warhounds became more powerful and the bonds between them and their human partners grew stronger, Dr. Quinn couldn't help but wonder what the long-term consequences of their actions would be. As the galaxy looked on in awe and fear, the Warhound Initiative stood poised to reshape the future of warfare. Yet in the shadows of Nova Station, Dr. Quinn began to work on a secret project of her own, a contingency plan for a future that, in her heart, she knew might one day spiral out of control. The warhounds were a force to be reckoned with, but the question remained, how long could they be controlled, and at what cost? As the Warhound Initiative continued to yield unprecedented victories across the galaxy, the UEF's dominance seemed unshakable. The warhounds, once seen as mere enhancements to existing military forces, had become the centerpiece of humanity's war strategy. Entire fleets of warhound units were deployed to contested planets, each one turning the tide of battle in humanity's favor. The Krognar, once a fearsome enemy, now found themselves on the defensive, struggling to adapt to the new reality that the warhounds represented. But as the UEF celebrated its successes, the Krognar were far from defeated. In the shadows of their war-torn empire, the Krognar leadership convened in secret, desperate to find a way to counter the warhound threat. Their scientists and strategists, driven by a mix of fear and rage, scoured every possible avenue for a solution. The Krognar had always relied on their technological superiority, but now they faced an enemy that could not be outgunned or outmaneuvered in traditional ways. The warhounds were too fast, too strong, and too unpredictable. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Drakthar, a Krognar scientist known for his unconventional thinking and deep understanding of psionics, proposed a radical idea. He suggested that instead of trying to match the warhounds' physical prowess, they should target the very bond that made them so effective, the psychic connection between the warhounds and their human handlers. Drakthar's research into psionics had long been considered fringe by the Krognar scientific community, but in the face of extinction, even the most unorthodox ideas were given serious consideration. Drakthar theorized that by disrupting the psychic link, the warhounds would become disoriented and uncontrollable, turning them from a formidable asset into a deadly liability. He proposed the development of a weapon that could emit a frequency specifically designed to interfere with the psychic connection between the warhounds and their handlers. The Krognar leadership, desperate for any solution, approved Drakthar's proposal. Thus, the psionic disruptor was born. The psionic disruptor was a marvel of Krognar engineering, a device that could emit powerful waves of psionic energy designed to scramble the mental link between humans and warhounds. The weapon was tested on captured human soldiers and their warhound companions, with devastating results. The warhounds, cut off from their handlers' thoughts, became frantic and aggressive, attacking anything and anyone in their vicinity. The humans, accustomed to the seamless connection with their warhounds, were left disoriented and vulnerable, unable to control their once loyal companions. With the psionic disruptor ready for deployment, the Krognar prepared for a counteroffensive. Their target, the planet of Epsilon Prime, a strategically vital world that had recently fallen under UEF control thanks to the warhounds. If the disruptor could be successfully deployed on Epsilon Prime, it would prove that the warhounds were not invincible, and it would give the Krognar the advantage they desperately needed. The UEF, unaware of the Krognar's new weapon, continued to rely heavily on the warhounds. On Epsilon Prime, warhound units patrolled the vast forests and mountains, securing the planet's resources and keeping the Krognar at bay. Among the units stationed there was Captain Marcus Kane and his warhound partner Thor. They had fought together on countless worlds, their bond stronger than ever. To Kane, Thor was more than just a weapon. He was a friend, a partner, a creature he had come to trust with his life. As the Krognar fleet approached Epsilon Prime, the UEF forces prepared for what they believed would be another routine engagement. Warhound units were deployed to the front lines, ready to crush the Krognar assault as they had done so many times before. But this time the Krognar had a new weapon in their arsenal. The battle began as expected, with the warhounds charging into the Krognar ranks, tearing through their defenses with savage efficiency. Kane and Thor led the charge, their psychic bond allowing them to coordinate their attacks with flawless precision. The Krognar, however, were biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy the psionic disruptor. When the disruptor was finally activated, its effects were immediate and catastrophic. A wave of psionic energy washed over the battlefield, invisible to the eye but instantly felt by every warhound and their handler. The psychic bond that had been the source of their strength suddenly became a source of agony. Warhounds yelped in pain, their minds overwhelmed by the sudden intrusion. The carefully orchestrated dance between human and beast fell apart as warhounds turned on their handlers, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Kane felt the impact like a sledgehammer to the skull. His connection with Thor, once a steady and reassuring presence in his mind, was suddenly ripped away, replaced by a chaotic storm of thoughts and emotions. He stumbled, clutching his head, as Thor, usually so disciplined and focused, began to thrash and growl, his eyes wild with confusion. "Thor, stand down!" Kane shouted, trying to reach his partner through the haze of pain and disorientation. But Thor didn't respond. The bond that had allowed them to communicate without words was gone, severed by the Krognar weapon. All around Kane, other soldiers were experiencing the same nightmare. Warhounds that had been loyal companions moments before were now dangerous, unpredictable beasts, attacking anything that moved. The Krognar, seeing the UEF forces in disarray, launched their counterattack. Without the warhounds to protect them, the UEF soldiers were quickly overwhelmed. Epsilon Prime, which had seemed so secure, was now on the brink of being lost. Desperate to regain control, Kane tried to calm Thor, reaching out with his mind as he had done so many times before. But the connection was gone, and Thor, driven by the primal instincts enhanced by Zerothium, was no longer responding to commands. Kane watched in horror as the warhound, his friend, lunged at a nearby soldier, bringing him down with a single powerful bite. The battlefield descended into chaos. UEF forces, unable to manage the now uncontrolled warhounds, began to retreat. The Krognar pressed their advantage, their disruptors continuing to wreak havoc on the psychic bonds that had once made the warhounds so formidable. As the UEF forces fell back, Dr. Elara Quinn, monitoring the battle from Nova Station, received reports of the disruptor's effects. Her worst fears were realized. Her creation, the warhounds, had become a liability. She knew that if the UEF didn't find a way to counter the psionic disruptor, the entire warhound initiative would collapse, and with it, humanity's best hope for victory. Dr. Quinn immediately began working on a solution. She knew that the answer lay in strengthening the psychic bond, making it resistant to external interference. But time was running out, and the Krognar were closing in. She proposed a radical new enhancement, one that would amplify the psychic abilities of both warhounds and their handlers, creating a bond so strong that no disruptor could break it. But this enhancement was risky, and the long-term effects were unknown. Back on Epsilon Prime, Kane and a small group of survivors managed to regroup in a makeshift command post deep in the forest. Thor, still agitated and confused, was kept restrained, a shadow of the proud warhound he had once been. Kane, his mind still reeling from the loss of their connection, vowed to get his partner back, no matter the cost. As the UEF licked its wounds and prepared for the next round, the Krognar celebrated their victory. The psionic disruptor had worked, and for the first time in years, they had a way to fight back against the Warhounds. But in the darkness of space, aboard Nova Station, Dr. Quinn was about to unveil a new generation of Warhounds, creatures that would push the boundaries of what it meant to be human or beast, and perhaps change the very nature of the war itself. The battle for Epsilon Prime was over, but the war was far from decided. The galaxy now teetered on the edge of an even greater conflict, one where the lines between man, machine, and monster would blur in ways no one had ever imagined. The Warhound Initiative had given humanity hope, but now it threatened to unleash forces that could either save them or doom them all. The galaxy held its breath as the war between the United Earth Federation, UEF, and the Krognar reached its climax. The Krognar, emboldened by their victory on Epsilon Prime and the success of their psionic disruptors, prepared to launch a full-scale assault on Earth itself. Their massive fleet, bristling with weapons and disruptors, moved through space with a singular purpose: to strike at the heart of humanity and end the war once and for all. But the UEF was not ready to surrender. Despite the devastating losses on Epsilon Prime, the Federation had regrouped and prepared for the defense of Earth. The Warhound Initiative, once the pride of the UEF, was now their greatest gamble. Dr. Alara Quinn, working tirelessly aboard Nova Station, had developed a radical new enhancement for the Warhounds, one that would amplify their psychic abilities to levels never before imagined. These new Warhounds, dubbed Psi-Hounds, were humanity's last hope. The Psi-Hounds were the result of a desperate and unprecedented fusion of science and technology. Dr. Quinn had pushed the limits of genetic engineering, neural augmentation, and Zerothium radiation to create creatures that were not just enhanced but fundamentally transformed. The psychic bond between the Psi-Hounds and their handlers was stronger than ever, allowing for a level of coordination and communication that bordered on telepathy. But the enhancements came with risks. Dr. Quinn knew that the strain on both the animals and their human partners would be immense, and there was no guarantee of success. As the Krognar fleet approached Earth, the UEF mobilized its forces. The skies above the planet were filled with the shimmering lights of countless starships, ready to defend their home. On the ground, Warhound units, including the newly enhanced Psi-Hounds, prepared for the inevitable invasion. Captain Marcus Kane, still haunted by the events on Epsilon Prime, stood at the forefront of the defense, his bond with Thor now stronger than ever, but also more fragile. Thor, now a Psi-Hound, had undergone a transformation that left him even more powerful and fearsome. His psychic abilities were now so advanced that he could sense the presence of enemies from miles away, manipulate the battlefield with his mind, and even project illusions to confuse and mislead the Krognar forces. But the price of these abilities was high. Thor's mind was constantly under strain, and Kane could feel the weight of it through their bond. As the Krognar fleet entered Earth's orbit, the first wave of disruptors was unleashed. But this time the UEF was ready. The Psi-Hounds, their minds fortified by the enhancements, resisted the disruptive waves. Instead of chaos, the battlefield became a playground for the Psi-Hounds' new powers. Thor, his mind sharpened by the enhancements, sensed the disruptor's frequency and turned it against the Krognar, sending waves of psychic energy back at their ships. The disruptors, once the Krognar's greatest weapon, now became their downfall. The battle in space was fierce, with starships clashing in a deadly dance of light and fire. On the ground, the Psi-Hounds led the charge against the Krognar ground forces. Kane and Thor moved as one, their bond allowing them to anticipate each other's actions with uncanny precision. Thor's psychic powers were unleashed in full force, creating illusions that confused and disoriented the Krognar soldiers. They saw enemies where there were none, attacked shadows, and fled from phantoms conjured by the Psi-Hounds' minds. The Krognar, despite their advanced technology, were unprepared for the onslaught. The Psi-Hounds and their handlers, now more than mere soldiers and pets, fought with a unity and ferocity that the galaxy had never seen. The battlefield became a testament to the power of the human-animal bond, now enhanced to a level that transcended ordinary understanding. As the battle raged, General Tharnak, the leader of the Krognar forces, realized that the tide was turning against him. His disruptors had failed, his troops were in disarray, and the Psi-Hounds were tearing through his ranks with terrifying efficiency. Desperate, Tharnak deployed his final weapon, a massive psionic overload device, designed to emit a pulse of energy powerful enough to sever any psychic connection permanently. The device was activated, and a pulse of energy surged across the battlefield. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still as the pulse swept over the Psi-Hounds and their handlers. Kane felt a surge of pain as the bond between him and Thor was stretched to its breaking point. But unlike before, the Psi-Hounds had been prepared for this. Dr. Quinn's enhancements had fortified their minds, and instead of breaking, the bond between Kane and Thor grew stronger. Thor, drawing on every ounce of his psychic power, absorbed the energy of the pulse and redirected it back at the Krognar forces. The overload device, overwhelmed by the feedback, exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking with it the last of the Krognar's hopes. The remaining Krognar soldiers, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. General Tharnak, cornered by Kane and Thor, made one final stand, but he was no match for the Psi-Hound. Thor, his mind a weapon of pure energy, reached into Tharnak's thoughts and overwhelmed him with a psychic assault. The Krognar leader, his mind shattered, fell to his knees, defeated not by physical strength, but by the sheer power of the bond between human and beast. The battle for Earth was over. The Krognar fleet, now in full retreat, left the system, their invasion repelled. The Psi-Hounds, battered but victorious, stood as the ultimate symbol of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. The galaxy, which had once feared the Warhounds, now revered them as legends. In the aftermath of the battle, Dr. Quinn reflected on the path that had led them here. The Warhound initiative had started as a simple experiment, a way to explore the potential of an alien mineral. But it had become something far greater, a testament to the bond between humans and the creatures they loved, and a reminder of the power that connection could unleash. But as the dust settled and the UEF began to rebuild, Dr. Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line. The Psi-Hounds were powerful, perhaps too powerful, and the enhancements had pushed them to the brink of what was possible. The future, she knew, was uncertain. The Psi-Hounds had saved humanity, but in doing so, they had become something new, something that might one day be beyond anyone's control. For now, however, the Warhounds had earned their place in the annals of history. They were no longer just pets. They were heroes, the most feared and respected creatures in the galaxy. And as long as the bond between them and their human partners remained strong, they would stand as the guardians of Earth, ready to face whatever new challenges the universe might throw their way. But the question lingered. What happens when the line between man, beast, and machine becomes so blurred that it can no longer be distinguished? In the quiet aftermath of the war, that question would haunt the minds of those who had witnessed the rise of the Warhounds and the dawn of a new era in the galaxy.